beginnings tended to stay? Like, what was the retention rate of the members?
So that's where so a lot of people have this conception of the eighth. Like, not everyone knows about us, but everyone like knows that we're here, which is kind of like weird. But like, so the eighth hasn't always been one of. So people, the first question we get is, yeah, we've been around 6 years. How do you not have like 80 people showing up to events every day, right? Um, well, we kind of went a different route. We were getting a lot of recruits at the time, and I remember in the like our first summer, we were getting like 60 to 70 to 80 people showing up to our line battles, eighth members.
Holy crap!
But we, but me personally, like I didn't know them. Like I didn't know half of them. Like it was just kind of like people recruiting. They'd put on tags. They'd go through their own little training, and then boom, into a line battle. And like at the time, I thought it was cool. It was like, look at all these people wearing 8 tags. Like look at me. Like I'm so like I'm the best. Like what are you, a nerd? Like don't come up to me and talk to me. You necessarily know who I am. You know like so I thought it was very cool. But then like I just kind of like didn't like it. I like people. I like communicating with people. I like to build relationships. So uh, I really just didn't want to go down that route. So over time, we created the that our training system. Now, what you explained was our training system, and so a lot of people when they hear about it, they get weirded out. Uh, and so I don't think anyone else has our training system, but our training system is pretty like it's kind of to
Unique.
weed out people.
Uh-huh.
And so we went for more quality over quantity. And so our training system is different. So it might sound weird to everybody, but this is the way we've done it for like since the beginning of time.
Uh-huh.
And so we have something called the King's Foot training. And basically that means like you go through 2 weeks of training. You go through 5 days of melee, 5 days of drill. During that time, you can only make you'll be given 3 strikes. If you get 3 strikes within any of that time, you're immediately kicked out of the regiment. Uh, and during that whole time, everyone in the regiment has permission to just like be as mean to you as possible, like in line battles, outside of line battles, whatever, you know. And so like the trainings themselves, like there's probably like the most horrendous things ever said to a person during those trainings to the recruits. And so when that happens, they go. Let's say they pass their 5 days and their 5 drill. At the end of that, they have to go through a test. They go through the drill test first. If they don't pass the drill test, uh, then they're immediately kicked out of the regiment. Uh, if they pass their drill test and they go into their melee test, um, then the melee test is a 1v1 versus me, and obviously I don't go like full power, full tilt, or whatever people call it, like sweat, full sweat, or whatever people call it these days. I go to a level to where I think any eighth member should be at, uh, and so it's just a first to three. And if they pass that first to three, then we take them to the tree. We
Oh, indoctrinate them, obviously.
indoctrinate them into the eighth, and after that they'll be a full member of the eighth, and they'll be a full member of the community. So that's why I told you, like, our rate was like 3 out of 15 recruits would make it into the eighth, not because like if they not because like we're like the best fucking Spartan soldiers in the world, but because like we have a very different community that we created with our training system. Like if you couldn't take like internet hazing, then you probably are not going to be the most fun person to hang around for a long time.
Uh-huh. And so basically, I guess what happened was that since you weeded all the other people out, you created that community that's still around. Is that kind of how it worked out?
Yeah, I mean, like our newest member, I believe is Canadian Patriot, and he's our newest member in the last 6 months. So, but before that, like we don't really recruit that much. We already have our set numbers. Like we can show up with 10 to 15 players, which is pretty decent these days. Um, and those 10 to 15 players have been playing the game with the eighth for like at least 4 years. So that's kind of the community that we created, and I think that's why we're different. And our foundation is so strong that like NW things that happen don't really affect us.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you now, what's a notable achievement that the eighth had? If you had to pick your thing that you think you worked really hard and then finally achieved for the eighth, what would you say?
Um, I don't. Okay, so the eighth, which is it's kind of weird. Like we've been around a long time, but we haven't really won anything.
Well, it doesn't
Um,
have to be in that sense, but like a goal you set out to do and you feel like you just accomplished it and that's your you want to be known for?
So I guess our goal was to in our first year was to really just become the most disciplined regiment in North America, and that happened. And so during Mountain Musket, like we were probably like one of the strongest regiments around. Like there's no doubt that like we weren't afraid of anybody, and we could take on a lot of regiments. And even now, like in the super stacked mailing lines that people have, like we can go up against these regiments and in 1v1s and like we can hold our own, which is pretty impressive for the amount of time that we really don't spend on the game nowadays. But I think our most like accomplished thing was that we kind of just built a community and we play the game and we played at a high level without really needing to sacrifice things um, like leaving regiments constantly, moving around, like trolling, losing friendships, and all that stuff. So I think that's a big accomplishment for us. And indirectly, I think a big accomplishment for the Eighth was pumping out really insane leaders.
Yeah, could you go on a little bit on some of the people who came out of the Eighth who went on to do different things?
So basically, the Eighth was like had a really competitive members in it, and so indirectly the Eighth kind of created a bunch of leaders. And even if they're admitted or not, I think that we had a big part to play in the community. So one of the first people to leave, we had like we called them revolutions in the Eighth. We had the first person to leave and to rebel was a man named Chester.
Chester.
And some people might know Chester. Back in the day, he led a really competitive regiment. They called the 7Y, and Chester himself was a really notable mailer. And the 7Y was one of the top 10 in North America at the time, and yeah, that was awesome. You know, like at the time I was like really betrayed and I was hurt, but I was like, you know what, like he made his own regiment, he did good, right? The next person to leave was Tico, and Tico was kind of like someone that was with me near the beginning, so that was really hard for me. And I guess Tico was kind of like in my kind of the reason why I left the 16th. So Tico really wanted to create his own thing. He really wanted to be recognized for all the work he was doing because he was doing a lot of work, and he was a lieutenant colonel at the time. Um, but what happened was our regiment was like I led most of the time, and Tico kind of handled like the backstop stuff, like regimental meetings and regimental like paperwork, I guess, and setting up events and all that stuff. And so we just had a falling out in the middle of a line battle. From what I remember was it was actually it's kind of funny now, but I guess it wasn't funny. But what happened was I led a round. It was like average round, and then Tico was like, "Man, like I should lead. I can do better." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And so I let him lead the next round, and I think the first, and this was in a public event, and so with like the very first, like I think it was like minute, like he gets the entire line like obliterated. They all die,
Oh.
and so like, and I think what I said to him was like, "This is why you're the secretary, and this is why I'm the leader," and I think
Oh.
that was like something that really set him off. And then I think that day or the next day, he left the regiment and made the second QF.
Wow, and the second QF really did go on and do a lot in the community.
Yeah, they did a lot. Second QF became a huge regiment, and for a time we fought against the second QF. I think we won a couple of times, but for the most part, the second QF over time dominated the 1v1 scenes. And actually, like with the second QF, like I said, I acknowledge other players. Like I acknowledge when someone puts their hard work into something and someone really tries. I don't think it's anybody's right to put your opinion to really like put them down, because Tico was working really hard. So I offered him my server. The second QF trained beside us sometimes on our servers. So um, those were things that like I was really proud of, and second QF becomes super strong. And another leader that came out of the eighth was the 29th, Huguenot. They were like a super big ass regiment back in the day, and they did a lot. I wouldn't say they were like the best in melee wise, but they were just kind of a really big regiment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like, and a couple other people, like, I guess I wouldn't say you came out of the eighth, but like you were in the eighth and you created the AEF. Irish came out of the eighth too. He created the 60E,
60E. Mm-hmm.
and we've pumped out a lot of leaders. And I don't know if it's indirectly because of me or because of the eighth, but I think we've had a big impact it in the community for sure.
Wow. So while being in the eighth too, do you have any what was the culture that was built from the like training system? Like how were the day-to-day things?
So our day to days, there's kind of like three different eras of the eighth. I'll just go through all three of them real quick. So like era one, which is just kind of like try hard pants, like you get on the computer with your headband
Sweat,
on
sweat,
because
sweat.
you're gonna sweat everywhere. Like, and so during those times, like if you like literally our trainings made it to like where if you twitched, like if you twitched your mouse or if your character twitched, like you'd get a strike for that, right, in the training. uh and so like that's how intense it was, and some people were like, wow, like really, like, like that seems a little too much, but like that's kind of the standard that we had. And if we recruit people nowadays, we make them go through the same training. We're just not actively recruiting. And so that's kind of like the culture that we had. We had that culture of like, yeah, this is what's gonna happen. Everyone knows what to do. If you're going against the meta of the regimen being super strict and super tilted, then yeah, you're not gonna make it here, and everyone's really hostile. And that's kind of what happened. And then during the second era, which is kind of like the falling more into like public events and kind of more chill era. Um, at that point, we had like a really settled community, so we really didn't need to do much. We just kind of like this was during like the start of NW and stuff like that, and we just kind of like said we're just gonna chill, recruit people if we need to, and during that thing, the culture was like drifting away from NW. So a lot of people were getting tired of Warband in general. I think during that time, because it was already like 4 years in, and people were like, we've been playing a long time. We'd be showing up to events, and we'd have like trainings like 2 days, and then like two events per week, and it'd just be like too much warband for a long
Mm-hmm.
time, and so the culture drifted into more of playing a lot of different games together in the eighth, and we didn't really care about melee. Um, so the only person in the eighth that's ever come out to public tournaments or events for melee has been me. No other eighth member has been to tournaments. Like, um, so which is like weird because like I think we have a pretty solid melee line, but that's kind of the culture that happened because like back in the day in era one there wasn't a lot of melee tournaments. It was mostly just dueling. Era two there was a group fighting kind of started up and no one was really interested in that. Um, and we didn't really train group fighting in era two or era three. Like we just kind of like we just had a buddy system that we used whenever we fought. We don't do group fighting lines in the eighth. We do different things, and this is kind of like our meta, I guess. But era three culture now, which is presently, we just like we're just super chill dudes. We're just a community. We've been around a long time, 6 years in. We're just kind of like we don't need to recruit anybody. Like if we sign up to a league, we know who's gonna show up, and we're not really affected by things that happen in NW. Like if let's say like the 91st or the NR4, they go up to us and like, wow, the eight sucks, and it's like, oh, good for you. Like it's like wow, like that got me. Like we don't care. It's
That
like
got me.
it's just like it's like good. It's like good for you. And it's like I'll see a different tag behind your name in a couple of weeks, and it's like that's kind of what we think.
So being in the eighth, it sounds like that it's really about the culture and the community. Now, one of
Yeah.
the questions that I had was, while leading that, what were some hiccups that you ran?
So hiccups that I was encountering um, while leading the eighth, there was differently a different thing. So this kind of develops into my personal life. In real life, I really more of a entrepreneur and a business owner, and so I was kind of running out of time, and to really just actually lead the eighth and to actually do something right. And so during that time, my hiccups were mostly just like figuring out, like how much time do I really need to put into this game, and how much time do I really need to uh, really develop players, and do I have the time to really like develop male.